Ladies and gentlemen, Triss is the luckiest person on planet Earth because they got to play The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Triss, how are you feeling just coming out of playing that the day of recording this?
Really, really excited. It was a fantastic experience and surreal that, yeah, I'm one of the few people in the world at the moment that has actually gotten to play it.
That's just crazy. Like, and I watched all of the footage that you sent over. Like, I loved watching it, and I'm sure you had a lot more fun playing it. But right now, let's get down to the nitty gritty. That being the 4 new abilities: Fusion, UltraHand, Ascend, and Recall. Tell us about those.
These new abilities are so well integrated into this world. Like, it's not quite like... Alright, let's put it this way. They don't feel as situational as Cryonis did in Breath of the Wild. You can pretty much always be using a lot of these. Ascend is probably the one that might be most situational because you need something above you. So I'll start with Ascend because it's the quickest in that case. For Ascend, it's very specific, because I know everyone's wondering, like, could you just ascend from the ground all the way up to a sky island? No. When you activate Ascend, it basically tilts the camera up to see the ceiling above you, and if there's like a little green spot, that means yes, you can go ascend up through it, and if it's red, that means no, there's something obscuring the way, you cannot, and if you don't see anything above you, you can't do it. So, right. it is not infinite.
I thought that was pretty self-explanatory. It made me wonder, like, yo, you can't just ascend all the way up to the sky. There's like there's still like a limit, right? And you know what surprised me most about the footage was Recall. I felt like this would be probably the least used ability, probably. That seemed really situational. But it seems like they give you a lot of situations to use it still. Like, one of the first things is when I see you entering that base camp, and like right at the gate, there's a big spiky ball headed right towards you, and like you just recalled it.
No, it's exciting. I saw the spike ball, I'm like, just like the second trailer. Here we go. I can actually do it.
Yes.
And it's actually really useful because you can use Recall on so many things. Like at another point, a bunch of bokoblins are like throwing different things at me. And while initially I was trying to get the big boulder to get recalled, I kept missing that one, so I got curious and I tried the little pebble that one of them threw at me. And yeah, I just was able to send that one back.
Wow.
So any projectile, theoretically, could get recalled. So it has some decent use in battle as well. I would love to see that used for like a boss or something. Like you have to like send its projectile back at you. Now that I've actually seen how it works in battle, I think you could. It does like slow everything around you down when you use that. So trying to time like an arrow being fired at you is not easy.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, I also saw you use it in a clever way during a puzzle where you had to open this aqueduct and it kept closing if you stopped using UltraHand to lift it up. But you used Recall to just open it back up because it already remembered, hey, you opened me up. Like, yep. I can do it again.
Yep.
And that was really interesting to see. But speaking of UltraHand, that's kind of probably going to be the one most used, it seems. UltraHand seems like a natural evolution of Magnesis from Breath of the Wild, except it's not just metal items. It's pretty much anything that's like physical and interactive, except people, right?
Yeah, you cannot use it on people. I don't have footage of it, but I encountered Koroks. I know everyone got excited in Aonuma's footage, this little Korok with the backpack. Like, I need to find my friend. I did encounter one of those, did the little quest, got Korok seeds. Take that as you will, everybody. But I had to use UltraHand to get this Korok to his friend. But you can't pick up the Korok. But the Korok's wearing a backpack. Like the giant backpack that's like too heavy for it. But you can pick up the backpack. So I'm like dangling this poor Korok all over the place as I'm trying to build something to get it to another island.
Well, you know, with that logic, you could pick up anyone wearing clothes by just picking up their clothes. You know, I don't know, that their clothes might rip now that I think about it.
I'm thinking of like in the trailer where we saw Link was pulling like the cart of people. I'm thinking maybe if everyone's sitting on that, you can lift the whole thing still.
Ooh, that'd be scary for them.
Probably. But I imagine you might get a lot of interesting scenarios like that where objects attached to people or objects that people are like standing on or using, you can probably interact with. But the people themselves, you cannot. But that being said, even though you can't interact with the people, it still feels like almost limitless what you can interact with for UltraHand. Like, any kind of materials around, any kind of objects around, as long as you can interact with it in some way, you can pick it up with the UltraHand. And sure, you could pick up an object and just walk around holding it if you want. But you could also, like, stick it to various objects, fuse things together. First thing I fused in footage we unfortunately don't have, I was just curious, so I stuck 2 minecarts together. I stuck 2 minecarts on top of each other, and then 2, like, wooden boxes against them, just to see if it would even work. And it really shows that it's really up to your imagination, and getting something to work out of it is also really satisfying, too.
Oh, I bet. I saw you make those little bird things, those metallic birds.
Yep.
That reminds me, like, how does that flying feel? There's going to be a lot of flying in this game because of the Sky Islands, and if flying is not great to control, I'm going to be very sad.
So flying the stone bird thing specifically, the first time I built it and worked with it, I just kind of crouched on it and let it do its own trajectory, which worked fine, seemed actually pretty good. But then the second time I actually added like a steering mechanism, and I was surprised at how well it controlled. I was expecting to have to fight it a little bit, but it felt pretty smooth.
That's really good to hear.
Like tilting back on the stick to actually get it to go up a bit, and it was gliding through the air pretty nicely.
That's really great to hear, yeah. And, before we get too far, I want to talk about Fusion once again, because, you built this with Fusion. Are we going to have to make these things by hand every single time, or is there like a streamlined way?
With the UltraHand, there is a way that like kind of streamlines the process. We can't talk about it unfortunately, but there is a way to streamline the UltraHand process, which is a very unexpected but welcome addition.
I get Fusion and UltraHand mixed up because it's like with UltraHand you're still fusing stuff together.
You are. You are.
So it's very confusing. But with Infusion's case, I saw you do some pretty creative stuff with this ability. Like I saw you fuse two weapons together, which was really cool, made it longer and stronger. But let's the bomb flowers are back, Tris. You told me the bomb flowers are back in this game?
Yes, the bomb flowers are back. They are materials just like other like insects, flowers, things like that. You can attach them to objects. I totally attached the bomb flower to a spear. Said for this end of this preview event, I'm going out with a bang, and boy did I.
That's so cool. And just the fact that anytime you can just have a bomb arrow. Every time I replay Breath of the Wild on like any save file, whatever, I always have no bomb arrows. And now it's just like, hey, I'll be able to have this. I'll be able to have any kinds of arrows that I want. Is there any other cool fusions that you put together during this preview that I might have forgotten?
I did get to answer everyone's question about the meat arrows.
Yes.
Very early on, I noticed we had raw meat in the inventory. I'm like, all right, I'm near enemies. I'm going to try it. So I fused the meat arrow, launched the arrow right near a big moblin, and the moblin immediately goes, what was that? And immediately gets excited over the food and just starts eating it. So it's a distraction. But it works very, very nicely, I gotta say. I probably did it a bit closer range than I should have. I'm surprised it worked as well as it did. But you could probably do some really fun things with it now that we can confirm, yes, as long as the enemy gets distracted by the meat, it works as a decoy, so.
That's so cool. I'm really excited to see like what fusions I can come up with. Like I've noticed like you're using like the arrows and there's a lot of pausing in between because you're just like, what can I fuse to this arrow? What can I fuse to this arrow? Can you imagine if the game didn't pause while you were doing all that stuff? Oh, it would be a madhouse, Tris. It'd be a madhouse. But talking about the game world, there's a whole new area to explore, and that is the sky. I even noticed that in the map there's different sections, like you can adjust with the D-pad. The sky's up there, ground's down here, of course. And you did a lot of exploring of the Sky Islands, I've noticed. So that was like the big focus of this preview. How did it feel exploring these places?
Really interesting because of the fact that they're different sizes, and they're so well spaced out. Every single Sky Island you land on, it becomes, okay, well, I've explored everything this island has, but how do I get to the next one? Is there something already here leading me. Like, in some of these, there was like a big cube that can move, and then there was a couple of rockets to attach. So, okay, well, that's how they want me to do it, so I guess I could work with that. But then there are a couple times where you land on an island, and there's not really much to work with. And you gotta figure out, okay, well, do I have something in my inventory I can use to get myself over there? Is there something I can summon, or is there maybe an enemy that has something that I have to defeat first? So, every island, in a sense, almost feels like a puzzle to solve, if not only a puzzle to figure out how to get to the next one.
Got it. Yeah, that looks really cool. I saw that you basically replayed like the same section like twice to really see like how different each playthrough can be. I really like that you were able to do that at the preview to just see like the different ways you can come up with certain solutions.
It is satisfying too. The fact that like every time we've seen something in this game, you think, oh, like I bet this is even more limitless than Breath of the Wild was. I bet, because Breath of the Wild already had ways of being able to solve puzzles in different ways, but this game really pushes that to the limit, and it's something you get a hint of in the trailers, but it's really not until you play it yourself that you're like, oh, I know how to solve this. I could do it this way, and then you do it, and then someone tells you, cool, now do it again, a different way, and you think, okay, and then you start like challenging yourself and like, okay, well, I could do this, I could put these things together, and it makes you look at it all in a completely different perspective, and it's really cool.
I liked that hot air balloon you made.
Yeah, when I got it to work.
Yeah, the way you got it to work was just by putting a flamethrower like in the middle of it and having it blow the hot air balloon up. That's just so cool. That was so sick. That reminds me, how does the game feel overall? Like, I imagine it feels quite similar to Breath of the Wild with it being a direct sequel, but was there anything different about the controls maybe?
So it definitely feels very similar to Breath of the Wild, but I would say in the best ways. For the most part, in the best ways. Like, there's the fun of Breath of the Wild is still there. The controls, while some of them might still be a bit of a headache, like trying to sprint while jumping, those differences are still there. But for the most part, it feels even smoother, even more responsive, because there's even more options. So the amount of things you could do are increased from Breath of the Wild, and the menus are easier to navigate as a whole. The whole experience feels a bit more streamlined. Any Breath of the Wild veteran, I think, would comfortably be able to get into this and not really question any of it, which I felt was nice. Like, even the new additions, I didn't jump into them and go, oh, that's strange. Oh, that's gonna take getting used to. Like, I didn't have that at all. Everything felt natural based on my experience with Breath of the Wild, which I think was very, very good. But like additions, for example, like the material menu by pressing up on the D-pad is really nice to be able to just open that up real quick. And the radial menu to change your ability, I think is much nicer than having to do it by up on the D-pad then the different button. Like, that actually works very nice. I really like how that's done. Diving in the air feels very natural. Pulling out the bow while diving in the air is really cool. If you can not make a fool of yourself like I did.
Oh man, beautiful footage that you recorded right there. Thank you for blessing us with that comedy. What I also noticed too is the inventory menu, though it looks somewhat the same with a few differences here and there. There's pressing the shoulder buttons to switch pages. Much needed. Much needed.
It is no longer constantly flicking that right stick. It's actually much more streamlined and makes much more sense now.
God, yeah, really. Speaking of annoyances, was there anything from this preview that you're a bit concerned about? Maybe being an annoyance when you finally play the game.
I did notice with so like UltraHand being very similar in terms of how you move objects, like with Magnesis. You now have the ability to rotate them, which is already a step up from Breath of the Wild. But the rotation feels a little limited at times. So I have like this pen, for example. Like, if you approach an object with UltraHand, you can rotate like along the x-axis or the y-axis. But if you approach it from an angle, you're rotating it while angled along those as well. So it gets very easy to get misaligned, and you'll constantly find yourself, or at least I did, constantly finding myself picking something up, going, nope, dropping it, changing where Link was, picking it up again, to try to rotate it the way I want to. I hope that doesn't happen a lot. That is one thing that kind of concerns me. A reset button to reset the position would be nice.
Yeah, that's what I thought they'd add at least. But that's what I was always concerned about too. Rotating stuff in Breath of the Wild didn't feel very fun either. And I mean, this at least you have guided arrows, which I guess is cool. But it also doesn't sound like this is anything that's gonna break the game if it's not like. If it doesn't get like big, the game's done. It's not gonna get fixed. But yeah, it's still but if that's like the only real concern you have, like it sounds like you're still gonna be in for a great time. But
yeah, exactly. That was really a case of I was just constantly trying to make different things in a short amount of time, so much that it started to kind of get to me. And also in the preview event, you have limited time. Not like when you actually have the game and you can play as long as you want. So I'm sitting there trying not to spend too long doing each thing. So getting slightly annoyed, I need to keep putting it down and change how I'm rotating it. I don't think that would even bother me as much during like general gameplay too.
Right, yeah, that's just a thing that happens. But is there any surprises? Anything you were surprised by during this gameplay?
I mean, I mentioned the Koroks. I was genuinely surprised to see the Koroks again. And I should mention, too, on the Koroks, I think they function the same. Because Link's inventory is pretty limited from what we saw. So, if Koroks are back, and Link's inventory is pretty limited, they probably do the same thing of you give them to Hestu and he'll increase your inventory size. That's an assumption, of course, but both keys to that are kind of there, so...
Sure sounds like it.
But otherwise, I think I was surprised at just how limitless it really does feel. Going about the fusions, the UltraHand, the amount of things you can do in this world. Like, I know everything we've seen of it thus far is really trying to push that idea, but as much as I've been excited for this game, part of me was really in that I gotta see it to believe it. There has to be, like, something stopping you, some sort of limitation to it. There is a little bit, like, if you fused, like, two swords together, for example, and, you found this monster horn, and you want to attach this to the same sword, you have to unfuse that. You have to destroy that fusion to then fuse it to something else. So you cannot stack 4 swords together to make a giant weapon to beat Ganon to death with. I'm sorry.
So much for my 4-sword adventure.
I guess that limitation did kind of surprise me because we really weren't sure if you'd be able to fuse a ton of things or if it was just going to be the one thing. I guess it makes sense for balancing reasons. So you're not creating this terrifying amalgamation that's like maxed out power because you just grabbed everything around you into one fusion. But I guess I was surprised at how that was really the only limitation I came across.
Wow, that's saying something. That is saying a lot. It really sounds like this game has limitless possibilities we'll be discovering for years on end.
I hope.
They're still discovering stuff in Breath of the Wild. I don't see why the same couldn't be said for Tears of the Kingdom. But anyway, any final thoughts, Tris, before we close out this preview?
Oh, I can't wait for this game. I cannot wait for this game. Having actually gotten my hands on it for a little bit, I am so ecstatic, and I'm so ready for this next era of Zelda. Like, it's so close. It's so close. I've gotten a taste of it, and I can't wait to actually get to experience it.
I was gonna say it's so close you can almost taste it, but you already tasted it. So yeah, thanks also so much for watching this preview discussion here on GameXplain for the most highly anticipated game pretty much of all time, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. We have other videos coming out for this game, so stay tuned for that. But if you have any questions on the game, comment them down below. We may or may not be able to answer all of them. If we didn't answer any questions on story or anything else, it's because we were not allowed to talk about them. So thank you once again for watching. See you guys next time. Bye bye.